Okay, today we are digging into a massive public health controversy, and honestly, it's one that's been absolutely dominating the headlines lately. We're talking about the literal tap water you drink, fast-moving public health policy, and your brain. We've got a groundbreaking new study to unpack today that took literally 60 years to complete, all to finally put this huge mystery to rest. So let's jump right in. It boils down to a really simple but incredibly pressing question. Does fluoride actually lower your IQ? Now, you might be wondering why this is suddenly such a big deal. Well, fears over this exact question have gotten so intense that places like Utah and Florida have recently started banning municipal water fluoridation altogether. Panic has been spreading like wildfire, mostly driven by some really alarming headlines and a handful of highly publicized older studies. But we have to ask, is this fear actually justified by the science?
Section 1. Something in the water.
Because public health policy is shifting so fast right now, we urgently need to look at what the latest, most rigorous science actually says. And that brings us to this newly published dossier in the highly prestigious journal PNAS. The paper is titled Municipal Water Fluoridation, Adolescent IQ, and Cognition Across the Life Course. It was published just in April 2026 by lead authors John Robert Warren, Gina Rumor, Camille Sajinsky, Pamela Hurd, and Michelle Engelman. Now treat this like a major news story because it completely reopens and, spoiler alert, solves this entire case. You'll notice a really stark contrast right away between the old data that's been driving all this panic and this new Warren study. See, the old alarmist studies, like the ones by Taylor and colleagues, were, well, heavily flawed. They relied on non-US data, they totally failed to control for socioeconomic factors, and most importantly, they were looking at extremely high, completely unnatural dosages of fluoride. The new study? It looks at normal municipal tap water levels, uses a highly representative U.S. sample, and applies incredibly strict lifetime controls. To put those old studies into a real-world perspective, think of it kind of like this. The extreme doses of fluoride they were analyzing in that older, panic-inducing research, that's the equivalent of chugging 50 cups of coffee all at once. I mean, obviously that is a massive, unnatural shock to the human system. Of course that's going to have negative effects. But here's the thing, it has absolutely nothing to do with what comes out of your tap. Contrast that with the Warren study. They look specifically at the recommended municipal fluoride levels. This is the equivalent of having just one normal, everyday cup of coffee. It's what actually happens in the real world when you turn on your kitchen faucet to grab a glass of water.
Section 2. The PNAS investigation.
So how exactly did Warren and his team solve a mystery that's been confusing folks for years? Well, they tapped into the Wisconsin Longitudinal Study, or the WLS. And guys, this isn't just a quick snapshot survey. This is a massive historical data set. It tracks a random sample of 10,317 Wisconsin high schoolers from the graduating class of 1957, and it follows them throughout their entire lives. Tracking the exact same people for over 60 years, that provides the ultimate gold standard proof of what actually happens to human brains over time. Just think about this incredible timeline. The researchers had access to these individuals' standardized IQ tests from back when they were 16. Then they measured their cognitive performance again at age 53, age 64, age 72, and finally at age 80 using standardized cognitive assessments. They literally mapped human intelligence across the entire life course. It's actually kind of mind-blowing. Section 3. Tracking a lifetime. Now, just having those cognitive scores wasn't enough. The data had to be completely airtight. To prove someone actually drank the fluoridated water in their hometown growing up, they cross-referenced 1940 and 1950 U.S. Census data. This confirmed which kids lived in the exact same county from age 1 all the way to age 18. And then they aggressively controlled for pretty much any other reason one kid might have a higher IQ than another. We're talking family income, number of siblings, the parents' education and occupation, even the size of their community. They isolated the data so aggressively that fluoride exposure was literally the only variable left on the table. Section 4. The final verdict. All right, so the big reveal. After tracking over 10,000 people for 60 years, confirming their addresses, and rigorously ruling out all those socioeconomic backgrounds, what actually happens when you compare the folks who drank fluoridated water their whole lives versus those who didn't? Zero. There is absolutely zero statistical link between municipal water fluoridation and lower adolescent IQ or adult cognitive decline. None. Zero. Let's talk about the age 16 IQ score averages. It's pretty fascinating. The group with absolutely no fluoride exposure scored a standardized average of negative zero point zero 0.07. The group exposed to municipal fluoride from birth, they scored exactly 0.00. So actually, those exposed to fluoride scored a microscopic fraction better. But practically and statistically speaking, these numbers are entirely indistinguishable. It is exactly the same performance.
Section 5. The real-world impact.
So what does this 60-year, meticulously controlled investigation mean for you, me, and our public health policies? Well, to be totally fair and scientifically accurate, we do have to note a minor limitation. The researchers couldn't exactly time travel back to the 1940s to collect individual urine samples, right? And they couldn't track how much toothpaste every single teenager might have swallowed. But remember, we're looking at huge population-level data here. Even without tracking every single drop of water, the sheer volume and the strict controls of this dataset make the population-level findings rock solid. The overarching conclusion of this breaking PNS paper is crystal clear. Water fluoridation, when kept those recommended municipal levels, is fundamentally safe for both the developing adolescent brain and the aging adult brain. Based on the most rigorous, life-spanning U.S. data we have ever seen, the tap water is not harming our intelligence. Which leaves us with one final thought to take away from this explainer today. If a peer-reviewed 60-year investigation tracking over 10,000 people definitively proves that municipal fluoride is safe for our brains, why is fear still driving our public health policies? How quickly are we willing to abandon established, safe public health measures just because of flawed, alarmist science? Definitely something to think about the next time you turn on the tap.